again. I just flew in from Hanoi, Vietnam, and boy, are my arms tired. Vada boom. Try the spring rolls. Tip the waitress. I'm here all week. I can't resist. I mean, if you hear scratchiness in my voice and sniffles, it's just the thing you get when you're on two planes for 17 hours with a few hundred strangers. The title pretty much says it all. That time when Stevie Wonder and I went to the NAMM Show. But there's not a whole lot to the story, but I wanted to tell it because it's one of my favorite memories of the time I had with him. And because it was just Steve and I. We were just being two bros geeking out over synthesizers at the NAMM Show, and it was a fun day. But before I get into the story itself, I have exciting news. This channel, while I was still in Hanoi, hit a milestone of 1,000 subscribers, and I am so excited about that. And I want to thank each and every one of you, all 1,000. I think there's like 1,023 or something now. That's going to make all the difference. I can already see that it's the algorithm is waking up and pushing my stuff to more people, and it's a good thing because I tell these stories. I'm a musician. You want an audience. You want people to hear what you're doing. Because this dinky little channel has finally hit that initial first hurdle of getting to 1,000 subscribers. This video and this video only, I'm not going to nag you to subscribe. I will suggest that you hit the like button and share this video with everybody that you know. But I'll give you a break from the usual nagging about subscriptions. And I am really excited that the channel is actually starting to go places. That time that Stevie Wonder and I went to the NAMM Show. Here's how this happened. You know what? For the uninitiated people that might be saying, what the hell is a NAMM Show? Every January in Anaheim, California, all the musical instrument manufacturers get together to present their latest and greatest instruments to the National Association of Music Merchants, hence NAMM. The retailers, the music store guys, and it's a trade show. That's the commerce and industry part of it, but nobody really cares about that because the place gets flooded with musicians who roam the place desperately, wanting all the latest news about the latest gear, and you pick up like 5 pounds worth of brochures and it's a lot of fun. I mean, for me, I haven't gone in a long time because it's just gotten to be too much. I saw that the 2024 version had 62,000 attendees. So it's like, yeah, count me out on that. I'll read about it. But here's how this happened, is I was at Stevie's studio, and I said, I'm going to go to the NAMM Show tomorrow. And immediately he said, I want to go. And that just kind of went over the top of my head, like, you mean you want to go with me? And he said, yeah, if that's okay. I said, well, sure. I said, you'll have to ride in my dinky little car, if you don't mind. And at that time, my car was a MG Midget. I can't even remember what year this thing was. It was a silly little car, very silly, but fun when it worked. It was the car that was in the shop in the last episode when I was telling you that Stevie picked me up at my place, and I wound up driving his Rolls Royce back. So that car was usually in the shop. I was doing some research on it. This is trying, because I can't even remember what year it was. It wasn't a current model. It was something that I could have afforded to buy used. But I come across articles that say this is not a great car. It was just a goofy car, and it was tiny. two-seat roadster, and it was appropriately named. But of course, if they still made it, if there was still an MG and they still made it, they wouldn't be able to use the word midget, because that's taken on bad connotations and it's not considered acceptable anymore. So they'd have to call it the MG little car, and that would be a completely appropriate name for it, because it was a very little car, and you had to kind of cram yourself into it. I'm 6'2", Stevie's 6 foot something. Putting the two of us in that car, it's like a clown car, you know?
It's hard to emphasize just how small this car truly is, but that's an F-350 Super Duty. I am eye level with its badge.
So I picked him up. I had the top up because it was January and it get a little chilly on the freeway. It's about 40 minutes to drive down to Anaheim. And helped him in there because there's no leg room and it's cramped, but he seemed to enjoy it. That car was a little scary to drive on the freeways because it was just so tiny. Any normal sized car would go by it, and it's like, you know, they're up there and you're tiny by comparison. So it's just as well that Stevie couldn't see that. But we got there without incident, and that day the MG behaved, and it was no incident. And I had been to the NAMM Show a few times prior to that. For a synthesizer nerd, it's like the world's biggest candy store. And I started going there back before this, when I was still working at Guitar Center. And I used to really enjoy it. But as soon as Stevie and I arrived, I can tell you there was a profound difference between just being some random schmo who works at a music store and some guy who is escorting Stevie Wonder through the show. And people just, they stop what they're doing, you know, and everybody gets excited to see him. And he's been such a fixture at the NAMM Show. I mean, it's like when I said I'm going to the NAMM Show, he didn't ask, what's that? He had already been, you know. He just said, I want to go. And the NAMM Association calls him the mayor of NAMM because he goes so often. And he's just a complete gearhead synthesizer nut, and he always wants the latest and the greatest. He wants to have it now. Tell me something, tell me something. So we get there, and I was researching this. I was having trouble remembering what was actually introduced that year, and I had to do a web search, because the thing that I remember that was the big thing for both of us was what I'll get to in a minute. But that was the year, 81 was the year that Roland introduced the Jupiter 8, which became a classic instrument. There's knockoffs being made of that and plug-ins and the whole thing. That instrument lives on. And the actual real Jupiter 8 would probably cost you a fortune. And also Oberheim showed the OBXA, which Van Halen immortalized with this. But for Steve and I, the hit of the show was from a company called Emu Systems, and it was the Emulator. The Emulator was actually the first affordable sampler. And when I say affordable, the introductory price was $10,000. They later reduced that to $8,000. But this was a big improvement over the Fairlight, which had a price tag of $40,000. And I don't even know how much Stevie paid for the Computer Music Melodeon, which was the first sampler that Stevie was the first person to use sampling on a record on The Secret Life of Plants. But he was crazy about sampling, and it was a new technology. And I mean, it was completely different than the style of subtractive synthesis that's all the synths were based around. Of whether it was an ARP or a Moog or an Oberheim, it was oscillator, filter, envelope generator, that kind of thing. Sampling has taken real sounds and being able to manipulate them with a keyboard. And when the emulator first came out, it was really they did a good job keeping it, improving it as time went on, because when it came out, it didn't do multi-samples. It was very rudimentary. It had 5 1/4 inch floppy disks that had the operating system and the sound stored on it. So every time you booted it up, it would load the operating system from that floppy disk. And it's just like 2 seconds of I think 8-bit sound. It's lo-fi stuff, but it was exciting and it was fun to use. And it was you felt like you were doing something ultra modern. But so this was something that I could see myself getting, and I did. The next year, I used part of the budget to my album Wolf to buy an emulator and a LM1 drum machine. So Steve, like any synthesizer nut, he gets gas, and I'm not talking about the kind of gas that you blame on the dog. It's an acronym for gear acquisition syndrome, where you just see something and you want it and you've got to have it, and reasonable thoughts go out the window, because I call it the I wants. And it's rarely tempered by the I needs. Sometimes I've tried to talk myself out of something by saying, do I really need that? It doesn't usually work. Because the answer is often, no, I don't need it, but I still want it. So there you have it. But Steve said, I'll take it. And I'd seen him do this routine the year before with Roger Lynn. Roger Lynn brought the prototype of the LM1 drum computer to Stevie's studio. And we'd never seen a drum machine like it. And it was such a well thought out machine. And it also, speaking of sampling, it was using actual recordings of drums. So it was a different thing from the Roland drum machines like the CR78. I remember Stevie and I being so frustrated with the CR78 because that was the first programmable drum machine, but it didn't have any quantization. It was like you could be like forever trying to get stuff to line up. But Roger Lynn's machine was so well thought out. And he brought that down and showed it to Steve, and Steve was knocked out by it. And he said, "I'll take it." And Roger Lynn said, "Well, we'll get you one. This is the prototype. I can't." And Steve put his hands on it. He said, "No, I'm going to take it." He wasn't being serious, of course, but he just wanted it right then, And he did the same thing with the emulator there at the NAMM Show, and he. Thankfully, the show had a couple more days to run, so he couldn't take that one with him. I don't know how we would have had to put the top down in the MG and balance that thing on his lap. It was a pretty bulky, heavy thing in a steel case, so I can't really see us getting back on the freeway flapping in the wind with Stevie having an emulator on his lap. But he wound up having the very first one, the serial number of like 00001 or something like that. I might have my zeros wrong. And they had previously promised the very first one to Daryl Dragonoff, the captain in Tennille. And so you get into this kind of awkward situation. It's like, well, who do you break your promise to? Daryl Dragon or Stevie Wonder? it's a no-brainer for me. Anyway, Stevie got the very first one. I got one a couple of years later, and I got a lot of good use out of it. J.L. Cooper came up with a modification to it that had added a filter and envelope generators, and so you could. That was a thing that became just normal to have on any sampler, is that you could actually shape the sound as if it were a subtractive synthesizer, and it was exceedingly useful. And then plus they came up with multi-sampling. They have more than one sample. You could assign a sample to bits of the keyboard, and then you don't get that chipmunk effect as you're going up. Or you could have sound effects discs where every few keys you got a frog here and a cricket there and that kind of thing. So it was a fun instrument, and it was just a fun thing to, like I said, Stevie and I being bros at the NAMM Show, and we had a good time. And then it was the only time I ever got to go to the NAMM Show with him. He still goes. You see videos of him at the 2024 NAMM Show. He's just fearless. He doesn't mind crowds. He just wades into them. Not just the NAMM Show. I've seen him in a lot of situations where he doesn't shy away from crowds. He doesn't need bodyguards or whatever. But that raised my stock at the NAMM Show immeasurably. For a couple of years, it still, the effect lingered. Because when I went the next year, in '82, people still remembered me, and they were all going, that's the guy that they brought Stevie. And they were asking, where's Stevie? And I said, it didn't work out. But I still got treated with, I wasn't just that, go away kid, you bother me kind of thing. And I remember in '82, Moog showed the Memory Mug, and they had it up in a suite at the Disneyland Hotel. So you go up there, they had it there, and they asked me if I'd sit down and program a sound on it. So I did. And I was immediately impressed with how beefy it sounded. But I wanted to try to do my favorite polyphonic patch, and that's I do this with every polyphonic synth I get my hands on, is I try to recreate the sound from the GX1 that's on Village Ghetto Land. And the only time I've ever come close to that is on a CS80, because the CS80 and the GX1 share similar voice architecture. And I worked on it for about 20 minutes or so, and it wasn't getting there. I was just going for that bowed, it's like a chamber string ensemble, a little bit larger than a string quartet. The kind of sound where you could play Eleanor Rigby on it. And it was not really there, because the thing that was lacking was touch sensitivity, and you need that with that kind of sound. And of course the CS80 has that in droves. But the funny thing is a couple of weeks later, I got a call from the people at Moog, and they said, that sound you programmed, we're going to make that one of the factory presets. And I was like, oh my God, no, don't do that. I said, let me work on it some more. I could make it better. They said, no, it's great. Everybody loves it. We're just calling to let you know and to get your address, because we're going to send you one. So I got a free Memory Mug. That was a nice perk. And I'll use that as the outro music, because I used that Memory Mug on John Gibson's She Told Me So, on the N bit where there's too many synthesizers playing lots of notes. And that's the story. That time that when Stevie and I went to the NAMM Show. Anyway, thanks for the subscriptions. Thanks for watching. And there'll be a lot more to come. So take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Tell me something good. Tell me that you love me, yeah. Tell me